Hi, this is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. And this is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and we are trying to do an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. So we've had continuing trouble with Facebook. I have tried to even post these on my other page, and it goes up without the title of Conversations with a Corgi. The good news is, no matter what, they will always all be on YouTube, thanks to the miracle of my helper guy, Brian. So I don't know what's going on. I can't even share them with my mother, which is really frustrating. But anyway, today we're going to talk about barking dogs. And the basic question is, my dog barks out the front window. What can I do if I don't like him doing this? Okay, so my dog does bark out the front window, and I don't care. His job as a dog is partially to be a watchdog. And they do say that houses with a barking dog are much less often robbed than those without a barking dog, because they don't know if you're home or not, and they don't know how big the dog is, and they don't want to cause a commotion if they can avoid it when they're thinking of burgling your house. So I like my dog to bark, and a lot of breeds are meant to be watchdogs. So if that's the case, and you don't want your dog to bark, like my friend, she moved to an apartment building where the barking dog was a big problem. There are many approaches to fixing this problem or addressing it. One thing we always do in the land of T-Touch is acknowledge the dog for barking, because this changes you, and your stress around the barking dog is partially making your dog bark. So by saying, "Oh, thank you for telling me the mail is here, you don't have to bark anymore," a lot of times, 50% of the time, the dog stops barking. So that means that you are sending him a positive picture for his behavior. You are acknowledging that he sees something and it's his job to tell you about it. And your dog may pick up on your change in energy and see that there's nothing to be alarmed about. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing, which is negative reinforcement, which if your dog, like my friend that moved to that other apartment, her dog was going to get her evicted if she didn't stop this. So she resorted to the first layer of negative reinforcement. The top layer, I would say, is the shock collar, citronella collar, one down, and this is one below that in terms of not helping your relationship with your dog. So she used the squirt bottle of water. Every time the dog barked, she squirted her in the face with the water. This has several advantages. Cheap, because you got the water. Can do it from across the room, and what we want to do is associate the barking with the bad thing happening, as opposed to you yelling at the dog. And yelling at the dog never works. My mother had a schnauzer that barked. I think it's the current schnauzer, actually. And she tried all the traditional 1950s and 60s dog training techniques, no bark, shut up, stop it, smacking the dog. None of those work. They don't work. Doing that does not work. It just ruins your relationship with your dog. But the squirt bottle does work pretty well. That dog had cut down its barking to like 20%. However, because the person could be evicted at any moment, if the dog was barking, particularly in the evenings, that 30% was too much. So positive reinforcement is a way of rewarding your dog for the behavior you want. So what you want your dog to do is not bark. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can teach your dog to bark so that the not barking, it becomes part of the training. And that I don't think is so effective. I have taught Tristan to bark them way too much. I try to calm them. Yeah. So with Tristan, teaching him to bark and then hoping he won't bark, and trying to get him away from the window if he's barking at like the UPS guy across the street for 20 minutes, bringing him into the room and getting him to bark and then getting him to shut up doesn't always work. So that's one approach. Another approach, which is what I prefer and works pretty darn well, although not for my friend's apartment dog, that was a problem. So I distract the dog, redirect the dog, get the dog doing something I want him to do. Tristan's really playful, as are a lot of herding breeds. So you can get a squeaky toy, call the dog over and get all excited and throw the squeaky toy in the air and pull the dog around and get him interested in doing something with you instead of the window barking. And that works very well. That is a lot of what my friends did to stop their dachshunds from barking, and they are one of the top barking breeds, and now they just do a little roof, and that's it. So playing with them, getting them away from the window and having them, do something fun with you. And this certainly works in the horse training world. Horses often don't want to go past the far end of the indoor arena. The light's different. They don't know what's out there. There could be herds of horses running around. It's very distracting. So before you even get to that end of the ring, the best thing to do is to plan. Okay, when I get to that corner, I'm going to do a shoulder in, I'm going to do a haunches in, and then I'm going to do a half pass to the quarter line, and then I'm going to go back out. So if your horse is working and he's thinking and you're changing your directions, he has hardly any chance of getting nervous at the end of the ring because he's focusing on what you're doing. So getting your dog away from the window with the squeaky toy or food, cheese works well, and giving him little treats and putting him through his tricks. This is a routine to help dogs with lots of problems, barking at the door, growling at strangers at the door. Get them to do a repertoire of tricks, pull them away, give them treats, or call them away, and have them sit down, sit, give me a paw, roll over, whatever your dog can do. And certainly I would increase that so that you can keep his attention, because sit, stay, down is a very limited repertoire, and you need a lot of stuff to do because you've got to keep his attention, and he's got to be good at it and he's got to like to do it. So, and you're giving him a reward for every single time that food reward he sits or downs, or gives you his paw or rolls over or whatever his tricks are while this distracting thing is going on. So that works really well. My friend with the apartment dog, one thing that she did, in addition to the squirting, just to change it up, was take a handful of tiny treats, because the dog is very food driven for certain treats, and just throw them around the room so that the dog had to run around and find them, and then she didn't care about barking. So that can work depending on how much your dog is treat motivated. Tristan is not totally treat motivated, so if I wanted him to not bark at the mailman, and I threw a bunch of treats around, he would get them, but he might let them sit there until he's done barking at the mailman, because nobody in his world has ever stolen treats from him, and he's always had lots of treats. But he likes to play, so the squeaky toy, calling him away from the window and getting him to do some dog dancing with me, some leg weaves, some rally, some anything, take him into another room, get him to do some spins, any of those things to call him away from the window will stop him from barking at the window. So those are a few options that you have. And remember, no matter what you choose mentally, if not verbally, thank your dog for barking, because they're barking to alarm you. And that's one of the reasons ancient humans brought ancient dogs into their fold, was because their senses are so much better than ours. They have sharper smell, sharper hearing, and probably see better in the dark than we do. So having your dog alert you when something's going on can be really beneficial. And here I am not wanting him to not bark, because if there's a bear crossing the street, I'm not letting him outside, and I want to know that. And, he doesn't always bark at the deer. Sometimes he does. He definitely barks at the fox that trots down the middle of the road, which is kind of nice because I like to see the fox, and it's interesting to watch the fox stop and look at Tristan and then keep going on. Because Tristan from the window, I'm sure, looks a bit like a house fox, which he is. So those are a few things you can try with your barking dog. I would not resort to the citronella spray collar. I would not resort to the shock collar. And there's another one that is somewhere in the annoying as much as the citronella, and that would be the sound collar. There's one that makes a loud, annoying beep, and this is what my mom used on the Schnauzer, which I think did help a lot. So when the dog barks, she's wearing this special collar and it goes, which the dog doesn't like. And the dog decided that barking wasn't worth hearing the obnoxious sound. And then when, like for my mom, the UPS guy comes at like 2 o'clock every day. So she would put the collar on around 1:45, and the dog would be wearing it, and she would be afraid it would beep, so she didn't bark at the UPS guy. And that helped with her training all the way along. And then at some point, I'm not saying this will work, that's what we do. We say, thank you, Astro. That's right. That's what you're supposed to do. And does that help Astro stop barking so much? So what my mom did after she didn't want to deal with putting the collar on and off the dog and didn't know when like the mailman might be coming, she just would say beep, which I don't think worked. I mean, it's no different than saying don't bark to the dog. Linda Tellington always says to say things of what you want the dog to do, not don't bark. So you say, I'd like you to be quiet, please. Come over here and be quiet with me. That kind of a thing, instead of don't bark. Because dogs and children don't get the don't part. They hear the word bark and that's all they want to do. All 3 dogs plus the parrot. I know what's going on around here all the time. Oh my God, a barking parrot or alerting parrot. That's loud. Yeah, nobody's coming into your house unless they're your good friend and they really want to see you. So those are some options to do if your dog is barking at the windows and you would like him not to. The apartment dog actually ended up, because the person was so afraid of losing their Section 8 housing, that's housing subsidized for those who don't know, she decided to put the dog on Prozac, which I highly did not want her to do, but it worked. I mean, the dog is just so chill now and relaxed, and it's not in a breed like a herding dog that's very up. You know, it's a house pet kind of dog, a little one. So, and not a barker like a Chihuahua. So it's, you know, it's kind of interesting that the Prozac was the icing on the cake. The person really wanted to use CBD oil, but it's quite a bit more expensive than the Prozac. I mean, that's pretty terrible when you can't afford what your dog needs and you have to go to a pretty big drug. And she's not happy about it. She is hoping to wean the dog off of the Prozac or get her on a smaller dose once the barking is pretty much nipped in the bud and her neighbors aren't ready to get her kicked out. So, and that's another option. We also have a whole bunch of essential oils and flower essences that help keep your dog calm. And a lot of those can be really helpful. The flower essences in particular I like because you can just keep them in your dog's water bowl and it's helping keep the dog calm all day long, and it will help with more than just the barking. It will help with separation anxiety and a lot of the other things that happen to dogs in our lives. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see if I can share this on my own timeline. That'll be the day. I think I've been thrown into the pile with my sister for naughty Facebooking. I mean, you know, anybody that's dealing with any kind of CBD sales is having their everything shut down. And I, of course, never talk about that and don't sell it. The sun is shining here today for the first time in a century. We are going to go outside today, and I have to do a little gardening, and we're practicing on our agility course because we're going in agility at the Corgi show in less than a month. Are you ready, Tristan? He's still having seesaw phobia. I don't know what happened down at that training center, but since then the teeter has been scary. Even his own little yard teeter, he went right up it the other day, and then yesterday I had to like bribe him, but then he went. Thanks for joining us. We will maybe see you tomorrow. Everybody have a great day.